I have a lot of friends, and the discussion that comes up is, why aren't my kids pursuing their faith like I pursued my faith? And I said, it's probably because you haven't pursued your child. God would call each one of us to allow the Word to become flesh within our family.
Here we go, back with another episode. We're glad to have you today. If you're listening in your car or sitting on your couch or your pot, wherever you're listening, we appreciate it. And if you would hit those buttons at the bottom, help us reach more people for Jesus. We have our special guest back with us on the show. If you missed the last episode, this is Mark Gregston from Heartlight Ministries. How many people do that to you?
Well, I'm still trying to get past sitting on the pot. What do you...
His name.
A lot of people do. They call me a lot of other names as well.
What's your favorite?
Oh, I can't even say.
We can't talk about it.
I can't talk about
on
that.
The podcast.
Yeah.
It's not Greg Markston. It's Mark Gregston, but people call you Greg Markston.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. So we ended last episode. We were just talking about life experience and gleaning from your life in your experience. I'm gonna be nicer.
Oh, go ahead.
You want me to be mean?
No. I mean, I'm used to it. I know I'm getting older. I'm almost 70.
You're almost 70.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations for making it to almost 70. I'm glad you're still with us. There's been that was genuine. That was genuine.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, figuratively, and in every other way.
Mentally.
So, that's
yes.
right.
Well, we're really glad to have you. So you've been through some very difficult situations in your life, just like most of everybody in the world. Mm-hmm. We all go through these situations, and it's the trauma of the situation, and then how we move through it is how we grow. Mm-hmm. And you got fired at 33. That you said that was one of the best things that happened to you, and you've processed that and moved through life and continue to grow the facilities at Heartlight and parenting today's teens. And recently, you were on a vacation where you had a pretty traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Will you walk us through that?
Yeah, we were in the British Virgin Islands. We got invited to go out on a boat with a fella and his wife and another couple. And one of the mornings we decided to go snorkeling. And I'm an all-American swimmer. I swam at the University of Arkansas. I've swam everywhere, did the pre-Olympics in 72. I mean, I felt comfortable and confident. And
you float in that water because it's so salty.
That's
also,
right. Yeah. And cocky. I just am, I'll take care of everything. I can do this. I mean, who needs a mask? I can see underwater.
Y'all want dinner? Give me a spare.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that kind of thing. And it was interesting because the moment... I mean, a lady goes, well, will you just watch my husband and make sure he does okay? Yeah, sure. I'll take care of him. I'll swim next to him and be all right. So he gets in the water and swims off, and another guy swims off, and my wife is in the boat with this other lady, and we're in a little skiff next to a snorkeling area where it's supposed to be unbelievable fish to watch and all that.
So y'all are out.
We're out.
Away from shore.
Yeah, we're a couple hundred yards.
Okay.
And there's a lady in the boat next to a little skiff, and she looked at me and she goes, "Hey, mustache, you doing okay?" And I go, "I'm doing well." And she goes, "Well, have fun." And I jump in the water, and the minute I hit the water, I knew something was wrong. And
what did you feel in that moment that you knew something was wrong?
I felt like I'm not breathing right. And I thought, well...
Just water. Hit the water.
Yeah, immediately. And I thought, well, maybe it's the snorkel. And so I started kicking my feet to go out. And as I was going, I blew out the snorkel. And then I thought, okay, it's okay. I get about halfway, and I go, man, I'm having a tough time breathing. I don't know what this is. And so I look at a rock and I go, okay, I just need to make it to that rock and I can sit on it and I'll be okay. And so I get to the rock and I try to sit on it and the waves are beating against it. And I'm going, I'm in trouble. I cannot breathe.
You couldn't get any air in?
I couldn't suck. I couldn't breathe in at all, and I couldn't scream or anything for somebody.
Have you ever felt that sensation in your life?
No, not at all. And I've swam. I swam. I ran triathlons for years. All this stuff. I never had that issue at all. And so I sat there, and I swam short distance sprints, and so I thought, I've got to get back to the boat. And I thought I could do this. It won't take. I mean, I can hold my breath and swim 25 yards easily. And I swam about 12 yards, and I thought, I can't even move. And so I stopped for a moment, and I thought, well, maybe if I roll over on my back and just rest. So I rolled over on my back, and I thought, I cannot breathe in or out. I mean, it's like somebody strangling you, I guess. I've never been strangled,
Right.
but I just couldn't get anything out. And I rolled back over, and I floated there for what I think was 10 minutes. It was probably a fraction of a second.
Okay.
And I said, this is how people drown. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice that just said, Mark, go, 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 go. And I just started kicking like crazy. Whether it was a former coach, whether it was God, whether it was something stuck in my mind or whatever, I got to this rope that was holding the skiffs, and I grabbed a hold of it. And the girl that was on the other boat that said, hey, Mustache, she goes, Mustache, you okay? And I started coughing up blood and all this stuff. And I tried to reach for her, and I started to go under, and she grabbed me some way. I don't know how. And pulled me up, a good-looking young lady, and she was a charter boat captain. And then she hoisted me up, and then another man, an Australian, is sitting there, and he goes, Mark, I'm going to put you in the boat. And he did. Man, he picked me up, cut my knees. I thought they were going to be stitched up, and throws me in the boat. And I'm coughing up everything. And
You remember all of this? Or you
I remember most of it, except I thought that it took 2 minutes to get back to the dock, and it was really like 15 minutes. And then I thought it was just 1 minute until the ambulance showed up, and it was 45 minutes.
That's what's going on in your head. Like
That's
you're
right.
thinking it's a very short period of time, and it was actually very...
Yeah, it was long. And when the boat ambulance shows up, they come and get me and take me in. They think I'm having a major heart attack. I'm not. It's called a pulmonary edema, which happens to snorkelers and scuba divers and people who run triathlons or climb mountains. And later found out that it's called swim immersion pulmonary edema. And they don't know why it happens. It just happens.
Just random?
Yep, random
people?
1 in a million. And 98% of people don't live from it. And so in the midst of all of it, I'm in the hospital, and they're draining fluid from me. And, then my kidney function goes way down. I have a kidney disease. As a result of it going down, that's why I'm having a kidney transplant now, because it just accelerated that disease. But it was interesting to me that what I thought about when I was in the hospital were all the things that parents have said to me throughout the years.
Okay.
I can do this. I'm proficient. I know what I'm doing. Something doesn't feel right. It must be something else that's wrong. Well, if I can just get to this point, I'll be okay. Well, we can make it back. I can do it on my own. Wait a minute. I'm going under.
I can't make it.
I'm drowning. I don't think I'm going to make it. And I've got to do something. And in desperation, they do something. And then it's when somebody asks them a question, they can't even answer. And that was the funny thing to me. It was here I was in need. And people were all around us snorkeling. Nobody knew it. Nobody knew it. And they're all floating, looking at the little fishies and everything. And I am there dying, basically. I mean, if that young lady wouldn't have pulled me out of the water, I would have gone under. There's no question.
It's a terrible life experience to come up with a great analogy for life.
It is. Well, and I got a book deal out of it, and so it's going to work out well. But
Look at the bright side there.
But it is. But you think about it, and you just go, so that happens, and then kidney things go down, and most people have to wait 4 or 5 years to get a new kidney. I've waited 2 months. Mm-hmm. My son is the one donating the kidney. I just look at it. It's all a part of something, and So I'm kind of anxious to see. And I think even when you have kids that struggle, it's not that God's abandoned you. You know, I'm one of those guys that really believes that everything that comes to you has first passed through the hands of God. I don't know. I just believe that. Now, there's a lot of situations that I go, I don't understand it, but I don't have to understand it. That's just what I believe. And then everything that does come to you, it comes to you to transform you more into his image. And so, I mean, that's how I get through the most difficult of situations, with the understanding that I don't have to understand
That's good.
why it's happened.
That's
And
good.
and I leave that to God. And one of these days when I'm looking at him face to face, I'll be asking him the
You'll have to
question,
find out.
hey, what about this? And it may be interesting that tornado that took apart our house, he goes, Mark, I wanted to get your attention. You know, it's like my dad. I was always mad at my dad. Always mad at him. He never did anything. I never had a good relationship. There was just no connection. And I've always been mad at him, quite honestly, throughout my whole life. Even the Heartlight idea and all that was stupid in his mind. Why are you doing something stupid like that?
Why do
It's
you think your
ridiculous.
dad had such a hard time connecting?
I don't think he liked me. I think he liked.
You really believe that?
Yeah, I think he liked my brother
Why do you think he liked your brother and not you?
because my brother's weird. No, not really. I mean, my dad just didn't have any social skills.
Was your
and-
brother more like him than you were?
My brother just told me that. I took him fishing, and he said, I think the reason that Dad liked me best, I'm going, okay.
You just rubbing in? Like,
yeah.
I know this.
Yeah, he goes, because I'm a lot like him. And I said, well, could be. And so, I mean, I had this dream, vivid dream, because it was in color, and I dreamed that I died, went to heaven, walked in, and
When was this?
this was when I was 57.
Okay.
I met God. It was Jesus as I'm looking at him, and the interesting thing is my dad was standing right next to him. And the first words that I said to God was, "What is this son of a doing here?" That was my first comment
In your dream.
in my dream. My first comment to God.
Yeah.
I mean, can you believe that?
That's crazy.
I'm surprised he didn't send me somewhere. And he goes, and he pointed his finger at me and he said, Mark, I want to tell you something. I've been using this man in your life for 57 years to create in you the person that I want you to be. And it was interesting at that point. I woke up the next morning and I haven't been angry at my dad at all.
Do you feel like that was your perspective and realization to really forgive him?
I think it was realizing it wasn't so much forgiveness. That word didn't come to mind, but it was more that God was using him.
Was there a point, like your dad passed away 10, 15 years ago?
No, 2 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was off on that. Was there a point in your life before he passed away that you felt like you could forgive him in your heart and move on?
Yeah. I mean, it just quit. Once I realized that God was using him, then it was just okay. It was acceptance of everything.
Of God's plan.
Never came to a swim meet. Never. I mean, I swam in hundreds of meets. I mean, never anything. Never gave me anything. I mean, I remember him telling me at 13, because I was working, throwing papers that we talked about in another podcast, throwing papers, mowing yards, teaching swim lessons in 9th and 10th grade. And he said, well, I'm not going to give you anything. You can make your own money.
I want to recap on the importance of this. You're almost 70 years old. We're still talking about your dad based on your upbringing. It has impacted you in a tremendous way.
Oh, absolutely.
For us dads out there, all of us, you're a dad, you're a grandfather, I'm a dad. How we treat our children can impact them in a healthy way for the rest of their life, or it can impact them in a negative way. There's some that are just in the middle ground where it's unbiased, but I would probably lean towards it being one way or the other.
Yeah.
Like, is my dad on my team or is he not on my team? And how we treat our kids now would determine how they feel about us for pretty much the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And how do we want to be viewed, not to build our own cup or fill our own cup, that my kid loves me, blah, 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 just to have a healthy relationship with them.
So true. So true. You know, people make choices, and my dad made choices. And so later on in life, well, I mean, he wasn't on my team, so I created my own team. That's probably why Jan and I got together in the 9th grade. She was sexually abused and by a grandfather, and was looking for a respite somewhere. I was in 9th grade, just by myself, basically.
You felt alone?
Oh, I was alone. It wasn't.
You didn't feel it. You were.
I was.
Okay.
I mean, there was no question, and so that's where Jan and I just kind of came together, and I think it does. I think you're 100,000,000% right that a parent gets to choose the role they play in the life of their kids, and especially during the teen years. That's when your kids need you the most. The most. So that's where I tell people, quit playing so much golf, quit pursuing all your own stuff. Take time out of the busyness of schedule. Quit teaching Sunday school and quit, coaching everything, and spend time with your child.
Whoa. You said quit teaching Sunday school.
Yeah.
You said quit teaching Sunday school
Yeah,
to hang out with your kid?
Absolutely. Well,
Really?
you have to prepare for that time. I mean, we get so involved in everything. So just take that 6 years and say, I'm going to pour it into my child. And then when they go off to college, now pour your life into doing everything else.
Well, if our greatest commandment is to make disciples, right? The best ones that we can make are the ones that live in our house, right?
That's right. That's right.
And you send those arrows out, and now they do, hopefully, if they choose to, do that as well.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends, and the discussion that comes up is, why aren't my kids pursuing their faith like I pursued my faith? And I said, it's probably because you haven't pursued your child. God would call each one of us to allow the Word to become flesh within our family. And that doesn't mean that I've got to see my parent reading the Bible. I don't have to see them and to make sure they're praying. We don't have to make sure that we pray before every meal. Those aren't the kind of rituals I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with any of those. But I go, it's the actions and deeds of how you treat other people, how you treat your neighbor, how you engage, how you listen, how you affirm a child, how you encourage them, how you learn to quit trying to win all the battles and go after the war, how you give them the opportunity, how you train them up, allow them to make decisions, become independent. Those are ways that the Word becomes flesh. And by spending time with your child, you get to impart the wisdom that God has taught you. But
good.
Most people's kids are already gone by the time a parent begins to feel like they have the wisdom. And
that's an interesting thought of we're all growing, right? Our kids are growing, their brains are developing. We're learning things too as parents. I'm 41 years old, and man, we still don't have this thing figured out. And trying to be the reflection of our Father for our kids, so that they have a positive example to look toward and say, this is what a good father, this is what a good mother looks like. We can't be perfect, but we can at least point them to that. One of the things that Courtney and I were talking about last night, our 16-year-old daughter's dealing with some drama at school,
Sure.
girl stuff, whatever, normal stuff in sports, and I thought she handled it really well for her age, and hit the problem head on and apologized for a few things that she felt like she made a few mistakes. And Courtney and I were talking, and Courtney said, that's my wife, Courtney, she would have handled it differently. And I said, I don't know. I'm really trying to put myself in the perspective of her when I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I probably would have not handled it at all. And Courtney might have handled it in a different way. But it's irrational for us to think that we're going to teach our kid how to handle a situation like we would handle it now, because we would not have known how to handle that situation. I feel like I'm bumbling a little bit here. But our kids don't have that perspective. And we're there to guide them and point them towards Christ.
That's right. And I think, well, one, I'm still trying to fathom when you just said you're 41 years old, because you look a heck of a lot older than that. I mean,
waiting.
I thought you were bumping around 60 or so, but I think the other part of it is this idea of parents' influence of a child and taking their own wisdom and pouring into them. Why do you think grandparents go nuts over grandkids? Then there's a couple of reasons. One is because grandkids are a reward for not killing your own kids.
I love that.
But the other part of it is this. The grandparent finally realizes, I've got wisdom, I've got something to share, and I want to make an impact on somebody. And so, I've never had older people involved in my life. I've never, there's a couple of guys. There's, as I mentioned on another podcast, the guy who started Silver Dollar City has been like a dad to me. And so I get to learn from him and go, man, I want to have that kind of wisdom now so I can utilize that with my kids and now my grandkids. But I think you've got to be very intentional as a parent to do that. It just doesn't happen. It's not going to church and it's not doing all these things. Your actions speak louder than words, and we all know that. How you engage with other people speaks louder than anything that you can say. And we're in this culture that everybody's just yapping and talking all the time.
A lot of words that don't mean anything.
It's not, and that's not how you transfer the wisdom of God. Nor is it how you give your kids a taste of the character of God. Is that you allow the Word to become flesh and you dwell among them. You spend time with them doing things and not just watching, but doing things with them.
Doing. That's good. But one of the things that Blake mentioned when he was on the show is your kids' ideas and desires and goals change. And how do you know if you don't spend time with them and ask them?
Yeah.
We don't. We have to be intentional. Yeah,
and I think that's Blake kind of toes the line in the same line of thought. I mean, he worked with us he's worked with us. He continues to work for us.
So far.
Yeah, so far. Hopefully he's there today. But I mean, it's the same thing. You are in this long enough to know that the greatest gift that you can give your child is time. And we get this idea as dads. We get this idea that I got to be working my tail off, during that time. And I go, your measurement of the success of being a parent is the engagement that you have with your kids during those teen years. Beforehand, it doesn't matter as much because you can't do anything wrong and they're not being challenged by life.
We're just keep them alive.
Yeah.
Feed them, clothe them, put a roof over their head.
That's right.
Hug them.
That's right. But when they start moving from concrete thinking, which is a preteen, to abstract thinking, now it's completely different. Now it's a whole new world. And if they don't have the presence of a parent, they will find answers somewhere. They will find relationships somewhere. My thing is, I want it to be with me. I want the best and I tell people this all the time, the best relationship that your child can have during their teen years is you. And somebody goes, no, it's their relationship with Christ. And I go, no, it's not. It's the relationship with you that is the presence of Christ in their life that reflects the image of God to them and calls them back over and over and over again and shares the wisdom that you've picked up from your relationship with Christ. That's the opportunity that you have that brings them to that deeper relationship.
That's a very interesting thought. I think a lot of people would probably argue with you on that as far as like the basis of who they are needs to be the relationship of Christ. And you're saying the basis of who they are needs to be your relationship with Christ as a parent so that you can show them and help mold them. Yeah. Is that what I'm hearing?
It is. Say? And I'm okay if everybody else is wrong. I mean, I'm okay with being right.
That's good. So I want to peel back the veil a little bit based on your experience. We're talking about perspective and everything that I've heard you say as being if we want to be a great parent, we have to step back and slow down and take some perspective and take count of our life and how we do this thing called parenting or how we do this thing called living our life and being an example of Christ. And the ways that you've gathered perspective through your life We've talked about several things, but one of the last ones we talked about was almost drowning. I want to peel back the veil a little bit on you thought you were going to die. What were the real thoughts going through your head at that moment that have stuck with you until now? Besides, you mentioned you had parents' thoughts going through your head of all the ways that they were drowning. What was going on in Mark's head about Mark at that moment?
God, that's a great question. It one, it makes you very grateful. I mean, I'm glad I woke up this morning, and that changes your perspective when you realize that there's possibilities that you don't. And I've had instances in my life that other things that I'm grateful that I've woken up and I'm here. Matter of fact, I told the doc that's doing my kidney thing, I go, I don't want to know what you're going to do. Don't tell me what you're going to do. You just make sure that I wake up. That's all I want to know. I think now this is going to sound really weird. The girl that reached her hand out to me was a lesbian.
Okay.
And I've joked about wanting to write a book called The Lesbian Who Saved Me. And people go, you can't say that. You can't say that. Or My Lesbian Angel. And it touched me enough that I'm going, it is interesting how we look at other people. And I know that I'm still somewhat, I'm probably a racist in my mind in little pieces because of, I don't ever say anything, but thoughts go through my head.
You're human.
I am. And I go.
That's such a buzzword to don't even say it. It'd be like you saying the F word on this podcast. But
yeah,
if we're being real, everybody has thoughts that are against another person, whether it has to do, with just not liking a person, or it could go towards their culture, or, everybody would be lying if they said that they didn't have some type of thoughts like that at some point in their life. We're all sinful humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's a part of me that just realizes who I am, and I know what I've thought about different things in life. And yet this was the little girl that saved me. And I really thought this. And people say, no, you can't say that. Somebody just told me that yesterday. You can't say that. Nobody would buy that book in California. And I go, yes, they would. They would buy that in a heartbeat because it would be written to this. If she was there for me, how can I be there for her? And I've always had that thought. A kid who's telling you to go F yourself and stick things in places I wouldn't even know they would fit, and yelling and screaming and flipping you off and and all that. And God would say,
you guys see a lot of that at Heartlight.
And God would say, move toward that person.
It's hard to move towards somebody that you feel like hates you.
Well, yeah, or has done you wrong, or is doing something wrong. I did that with my son when he had an affair. Had an affair, left the girl he married for 9 months, and is now married to our daughter-in-law who we love. And that was long ago, but I wrote him off. And I said, you are not following what I want. You're not doing what I think you ought to do. And at the time that he needed me the most, I wasn't there.
How long did it take you to realize that, you have all these kids coming through Heartlight where you say, I'm with you no matter what, right? This is somebody else's kid that you're not involved in their life until they step foot on Heartlight, at Heartlight property, and you're helping them walk through that journey, and then the reconciliation with your son of he made a big mistake.
Well, and it's a great point. It's interesting that I can do that with other kids, but when it's my kid,
I know. That's a great point for all of us.
And it was, and I was with a guy by the name of Paul Overstreet. He's a songwriter, writes for George Strait, and he writes Randy Travis for
great
everybody.
Songwriter.
Yeah, and I was telling him about this is where I am with Adam, and he looked at me and he goes, "Why would you say that to him? Why would you say that? He needs you right now, Mark. He's lost. He's lost, and you've kicked him out." And I sat there and I thought,
how long did it take sitting there?
6 months.
Okay. So
I didn't talk to my son for 6 months.
So it took you 6 months to come around.
I can go to kids that are doing the nastiest things and saying the worst things in the world to me and continue to love them and get through it quickly. But when it was my own son, and it's interesting now, that son that I ignored at the time that he needed me the most was the first one that jumped up and said, I will give you one of my kidneys.
At the time you needed him the most.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
Isn't that crazy?
I think we just need to pause for a second. That's pretty powerful, that whole story. And I appreciate you being real, because I don't think like a lot of people would not be real about all the things that you've been through in your life and open to talking about those just for the mere fact of helping somebody else out there. When our kids make the biggest mistakes that they'll ever make in their life, pause, reflect, pray, then put your arm around them. This is the hardest thing, one of the hardest things that we'll ever have to do as a parent. If my daughter came home today and said, Dad, I'm pregnant, what would my reaction be? She's 16 years old. Yeah. Everything would run through my head. Your life is over. Your total life trajectory is different. But how am I going to react to that situation that will still benefit the relationship of my child so that I can show her the love of Christ?
You know, and that may begin with this. I said it earlier, that if everything that comes to your child and to you has first passed through the hands of God, even though you don't understand it, then you're going to be okay. I mean, it really is. You're going to be okay. When Scripture, you read James, and it's interesting to me because everybody quotes James, but when you encounter various trials, you know, that what it produces in your life, it's amazing. And matter of fact, that's probably the only time that we produce those godly characteristics in our life is when we're faced with challenges. I mean, conflict is a precursor to change, and that's the only way that it happens.
And big conflict is a precursor to big change.
That's right. I mean, the times that Jan and I have grown the most is when we've been in conflict, and it's because she's wrong and I'm right all the time.
I'll attest for Jan that Jan is never wrong.
That's true.
Mark's always wrong. Jan, if you're watching this, I love you.
I'm always saying to Jan, yes, ma'am, whatever,
right.
Whatever you say.
She is the most wonderful, kind, just awesome person.
I think
by the way.
so.
Yeah, she's awesome.
See, I knew that in ninth grade.
People ask me on the same token, why'd you get married so young? I was 21. Courtney was just turned 20.
Yeah.
And I said, this is the best one I'm ever going to meet. I'm not ready to get married.
Yeah.
She says I am. So I'm going to go ahead and just lock this thing up.
That's the same thing that we did. We got married when got engaged when we were 20. I go, why would I wait? Why would I wait any longer? I mean, there isn't anything
People have
better.
been getting married for centuries at 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
It's
so
kind
you
of
guys have been married like 50 years.
Yes.
Like
yeah,
that
if I'm
now,
60, we've been married for a while. Actually, it'll be 20 in January.
Wow.
I want to wrap up the show with maybe the hardest question that I've asked you today. You mentioned your kidney surgery coming up.
Yeah.
Are they taking both kidneys out?
Taking both.
And Adam's giving you one
That's
kidney?
Right. Each one of my kidneys, I've got polycystic kidney disease. Each kidney weighs 13, 14 pounds. So I'm going to lose 30 pounds during surgery.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a weight loss program.
It's one hell of a weight loss program. So,
So, and when is that surgery?
It's September 18th. They take the kidneys out. September 20th, I get a new one.
So by the time this airs, will be after your surgery. You mentioned you told the doctor, just make sure I wake up.
Yeah.
Have you thought about what happens if you don't?
Oh, absolutely.
What thoughts go through your head?
Making sure Jan is taken care of, making sure everything's in order. You know, I think that. I mean, our family, you know, my grandkids and even my daughter, I mean, they're scared that something's going to happen. And If it does, it does. I mean, I want
Yeah.
to make sure everything's taken care of.
Have
And
you
so-
talked to your family just about if things don't go the way that you want them to go?
Not really.
I don't
Not
want to
really.
like project anything, but I just like I want to continue to gain perspective
Yeah.
from you, and like you're going through a lot. There's this idea as we get older, when we're in our 20s, we don't think about death. You start rolling into the early 30s, your chemistry starts to change, and like you just
Yeah.
have these natural thoughts of like, okay, I'm not gonna jump off that bridge into that water because I could get a concussion and pass out and die.
Yeah.
As we get older, those thoughts become, I think, more prevalent. What have you noticed as you got older? Do you think about death more than when you were 40, or is it something that you just kind of keep operating the way you've been operating?
Well, I think you look at things from a different perspective because people around us are dying. I mean, friends. Jane and I go to a 50th high school reunion, and the number of people that have died out of our class of 800 people is amazing. And
it's hard even for me to think about that.
yeah, and it's different. And so we probably know one person a week that's dying, and so that's different. You know, the comment's been made. You know, at the end of the year, they always show these little memoriams where they put it to music, all the people that have died this past year, and I know about half the people. I've heard of them. They say when you know who all of them are, then you're next. And I go, and there's some truth in that.
Okay.
That people around you go, okay, it's happening to them, but you begin to realize too. I believe that our days are numbered. Everybody's days are numbered. And you know, God may know the day. He's sure not telling me. But it's interesting to me in the midst of all that. I feel very lucky. I mean, I don't feel like I'm blessed. I mean, but I feel very lucky that it hasn't been me yet. Because as I sit in doctor's offices or wherever, I realize a lot of those people aren't going to be here in a few months. And one day they're going to be in there. Somebody's going to be in there looking and seeing me going, he's not going to be around very long. Yeah, I know that's a possibility. So it changes your perspective of time. It changes what you want to do, the activities you want to do, how I take care of my wife. You know, it's drawn Jan and I together more and more. I know that. And the pursuit of gathering things, you know, has kind of taken a back seat. I don't have to keep buying land and making sure that I'm speaking at everything in Nashville and around the country. I usually spend 200 nights on the road. I don't have to do all those things because the greatest assets that I have are right there at home.
That's my last question to you. What is practically, what are you actively doing to captivate your moments?
Yeah. Taking advantage of them. You know, that's it. I mean, spending time. I mean,
Simple,
yeah,
profound,
yeah,
simple.
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, Jan and I got married for a reason, and it wasn't so I could work my tail off and that she could just support me while I work my tail off and we gather stuff so that we get to pass things on to our grandkids. And I mean, there's got to be something more than that. And so I think that perspective is a little bit different. I take better care of the people that work for us. I engage differently with those families that, of course, they respond differently to me too, because
Right.
I've turned white, I've turned colors, and you'll be there in a couple of years. And
Yes,
so
3.
yeah. So I mean, I think it changes perspective, but it gives you a good place to be. How I wish I would have had that when I was 50, you know. And I probably, as I said, I started getting that perspective just spending time thinking, writing, and me writing, which is, I don't even read books.
You still find that hard to believe that you're writing books?
Oh, I do. I mean, but I love it. I mean, I love it, but it's hard to believe because I never thought that I would until somebody came to me and said, you could do this. I go, I don't think I can. I don't even read books.
Sometimes it just takes the spurring of others to realize what we might be capable of.
Yeah.
Like, hey, yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah.
Man, that was great. I think we can take a lot of insight, take a lot of information from that and where you're at in life and the perspective that you have. And the biggest thing that I've got from this is slow down, see the people around you, spend time with the Lord so that we can be a reflection of Him. That's just kind of a recap of somebody who's almost 70. You've had a lot of life experiences. You've almost died. You're going through a major surgery. What's important at the end of the day? I think we need to all ask ourselves that question.
Yeah.
What do we really believe is important? And do our actions line up with that? I think that's something to sit on and evaluate today. We appreciate you being here, joining us on The Uncomfortable Truth. Go kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.
How do you kick the day in the face?
You gotta stretch first. You have to be able to get your leg up above your knee.
That's not going to happen.